Wow, it worked.
Look at that.
I need to get that 15 pounds off. That was when my niece was getting married and I was
Oh
dancing with
my
her.
gosh.
I was like, "Ooh, I need to get back to my snatched jawline weight."
Yeah, well, we were talking about,
The
snatching your
gaucho roller,
jawline, the
yeah.
gua sha. Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
I'm so glad we had a long intro because I realized the door to my office was still open. I heard my dog's little feet and I was like, "Oh shit, I need to go close the door." Hey everyone, welcome behind the couch. Got a great show for you guys today. I don't know how we're going to keep this to an hour, but
I
we
know.
are.
Our guests are just gonna say, "Bye,"
I
because we
know.
love to
I know. We're gonna say hi and bye, and that's gonna take up an hour with the 4 of us.
Right.
I made a mistake. You know what? We'll go back and edit that out of our last episode because I forgot, the episode that we recorded. We were teasing this behind the couch, thinking it was coming out this week, and it's not.
Oh,
But we have 2 behind the couches this month in May. So there's this one, and then we're gonna have another one. I think it's May 24th? Question mark. Yeah, we've had a lot of people reach out and want to talk about books and other things. So
yeah.
stay tuned for that, you guys. Let's see. Hi, Shannon. Lauren, how did you make it? She was stuck in traffic. She sent us a picture on Discord. She's like, can you guys postpone like 10 minutes? Akiko, Catherine, Bulldog Mom. Hey, welcome.
Also, you know
Yeah.
what we didn't even mention in the last couple of times we recorded was, like, we got to meet Akiko at the
Yeah.
meetup. Like, there were several of the people that we've, like, been in contact with for a couple of
Yeah.
years. It was awesome.
Yeah, we got to see Donna again and Melissa and Suki and John and yeah, that was a lot of fun. It was a super
As
fun
well
night.
as, our friend and colleague Lenore,
Lenora.
coming Lenora with a couple of her friends, which was awesome.
Yeah. No, that was perfect. And Jake that we had here on Behind the Couch
Yes.
from Love Lust. Yeah, so yeah, it was great. We had a great variety of folks there. Any other housekeeping we need to do beside Patreon, new Patreon member shout outs that I'm
No, I think
forgetting?
that's it. Everybody stay posted with your social media about upcoming, events that we, have not quite nailed down the schedule for all of them throughout the early fall. So just pay attention to social media and we'll stay on top of that for you.
Yes. So new Patreon member shout outs. We have at the associate level, Frida Bird and Jade R. Thank you guys so much for joining since we had our last show. And then at the doctoral level now, Jen, she just upgraded her membership to doctoral level. So here is your diploma, Jen. Thank you so much for doing that.
Dun, 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 dun.
Okay, we got it. All right, let's get on with it, introduce our guests and bring them on.
Great. You guys, we've talked about this dynamic duo that are wonderful friends of ours. And we've done presentations with them or bits and pieces of them. Welcome, ladies. Welcome, ladies. Now
Hi.
let's put them
Hi.
on the spot so they have to be really embarrassed by all the love and affection and props we're going to give them. Dr. Megan Sachs. Dr. Megan Sachs, please
Hi,
give us a
everyone.
wave. Okay.
Hi, it's so good to see you.
Dr. Megan Sachs is the chair of the criminology department and an associate professor at Fairleigh Dickinson University, where she teaches courses on women and crime, serial killers, and crime policy. She is a former U.S. probation officer in the Southern District of New York, so definitely the lady has some receipts.
Mhm.
She shifted from law enforcement to academia after earning her PhD in criminal justice from John Jay College. Wonderful program, by the way, with a
Thank
focus on deviance and system reform. Her research tackles key justice system failures, particularly prosecutorial overreach, cash bail inequities, and sentencing disparities. And we could talk literally all day just about those 3 bullet points because they're fascinating. Megan's early fascination with crime was inspired by watching true crime shows with her mom instead of cartoons, and she has grown this into a career committed to exposing injustice and rebuilding a more balanced system. She is
Wow.
also the co-host of the fantastic Women in Crime and also Direct Appeal, 2 leading true crime podcasts dedicated to real analysis of how justice and gender intersect. next
Thank
one.
you.
Oh,
Wow.
I just want to say, I think watching Scooby-Doo was cartoons and true crime. I'm putting that out there because
That's the only cartoon I watched. That was the only cartoon I watched.
See, I knew we were sisters in so many ways.
It was me
Okay.
and Johnny Quest was my gateway drug. So
Your
there you
gateway drug. All right. So Dr. Amy Schlossberg is a criminologist and associate professor also at Fairleigh Dickinson University, whose academic work centers on wrongful convictions, prisoner reentry, and the long-term consequences of systematic injustice. With a master's degree in forensic psych and a PhD in criminal justice from John Jay College, Amy's path began in the mental health field before merging with her deep interest in social justice and criminal policy. Her research and teachings confront the flaws in police practices, such as flawed eyewitness identification and coercive interrogation, and she advocates strongly for eliminating the felony murder rule and removing reentry barriers. After Megan hired Amy, great job, forever grateful to her, right? She holds that over you, I'm sure, every single day. To help build the university's criminology program, the two colleagues became collaborators and eventually close friends. And it was the creation of their podcast, Women in Crime and Direct Appeal, that truly cemented their dynamic partnership and made us table mates so many years ago, where, we knew that we were like the East Coast and West Coast versions of each other in some way.
Gotta tell you guys, that was a hell of an intro. Next time you can just say Amy and Megan, criminologist podcasters. You don't
Can
have
I
to,
also just say something? I need to
It's
address
fun.
the elephant in the room here.
Go for it.
Your skin, both of you, look so gorgeous. I don't know what you're doing. I heard you talking about some roller while I was in the green room, but you both look absolutely gorgeous. I don't understand what is going on, but I want what you have. We can talk about that off air.
It's a simple 15-step skincare regime twice a day. It's so time expedient. It won't bother you at
I
all.
mean, it's working. You guys look fabulous. So thank you.
We joke on this, like we would always say, okay, we have our skincare or esthetician's corner, like where we would talk about something. But also like the filters on StreamYard are freaking awesome. So there's the secret.
I got both.
I didn't know about those.
I have my filter off, which is why you can see I have my little bags
Mine
today.
is low.
But we also trade all sorts of secret, like when we are on.
Uh-oh. Scott, where'd you go?
Scott, look at you. He's
Ag and all
frozen
that stuff.
time.
Oh, there he
Oh,
goes.
whoops.
Okay.
You froze for a sec.
Okay.
I thought it was just
Yeah,
good
it's all the Botox.
I'm like,
That's
wow.
why I froze. But yeah, like I pack like the collagen mask, and then the under eye things. And
I really need to start doing that. It's like it's way past time. So thanks. We're gonna.
I'll send you the list. I'll send you the list of supplements.
Well, that's what we were talking about backstage before we started. Like
Yeah.
my 12 or now 13-year-old is like rolling her face and doing. I was like, oh my gosh, you're gonna be so ahead of the curve one day, girl. Already.
So smart.
Thank you guys for your time and for being here.
Thanks for having us.
We could talk about so many things together. And then Scott, was throwing out things on our text thread that I'm like, oh my gosh, we should totally talk about that too. But we're gonna try and stay focused.
Okay.
So today, yes, we are focusing on media and crime. And I think that could be such a vast topic. So much so that, Megan, this is one of your courses that you teach, right?
Yeah. And it's definitely hard to teach it because you have an idea of what you think. There's like, mainstream mass media, but then new media, old media. So yeah, this takes so many different forms now. And having a semester on it, I would say is not enough. So.
Yeah. Is that a undergrad or graduate school?
It's an undergrad. All of what I teach right now is undergrad. So it's an undergrad course.
Well, and you pick out a textbook or pick out, like you said, the different topics. And I'm sure that is just like obsolete within a half a year or so, semesters.
I'm sure it's going to be when I teach it again. So I won't teach it for a year from now. And I'm sure everything will be, it'll be like a new ball game. So,
yeah. So before we dive into the research and a little bit more, along the lines of what you teach, what do you guys think has been like real pivotal, major historical moments in crime that include the media? And I think, it'd even be fun, like if each of us kind of say what that was for us personally, but what are the biggies, the heavy hitters that you guys see?
I mean, I'll go first because I know we're all gonna say the same one, so I'm gonna steal it
Go,
before
then
you
do
do.
it. Get
I
in
mean,
there.
O.J. Simpson, right?
So
I mean
what part? Like the trial itself or
I mean,
the
I was in elementary school, and I remember
Oh
them
my
rolling
god.
in the I remember
You're
them
not in
rolling in the
elementary
TV.
school.
I sure was.
No, you
In
weren't.
1993?
Oh my
1998.
Yeah,
god.
actually, I
I'm
was born in
so old.
'81.
Oh, shit. You
I
were
know,
just
fine, I was in
in
middle
middle.
school.
All right,
My
let's not try to
point
make it like you're that young, you
my
know? Come on.
point my point is, I remember being in school, and they, like, rolled in a TV for us to watch the Bronco chase,
Yeah.
and I
Wow.
Oh,
remember
For the
So
being
chase.
so appropriate for
right?
elementary or middle school. Just
Yeah, so I remember that, and it was, like, such a big deal, and I
Mm,
remember not really understanding why this was such a big deal because I guess I was too young to really I don't know, maybe I didn't follow football much, I didn't realize what a big star he was, but for
yeah.
me, that was definitely, the first.
I
geez, I
thought
wonder why we're all involved in true crime when our teachers are wheeling in
Yeah,
television
right?
to watch this stuff. Go
I
ahead,
mean,
Megan.
obviously O.J. Simpson was impactful to me, and I actually watched a lot of the trial. I guess I was in high school and had a lot of free time, apparently. But I think also the Rodney King incident was a
Mm,
watershed moment, I think, in media. One
Mhm.
of the first times that something was really
Yeah,
captured, police beating a suspect on film, and I think it exposed us to I think it just opened the eyes of so many people that this could happen and we just weren't aware, and this was like for me, that was, I think, one of the most pivotal moments in the way media
mhm.
changed our, the way we view things, and I think not just OJ, but the inception of court TV totally transformed how we consume crime news and true crime. So every kind of early trial that opened the door, the Menendez brothers was, oh my gosh, I mean,
Yeah.
that was also really, really impactful, I think.
Okay, Los Angeles is 2 for 2. What about you, Scott? What sticks with you?
well, mine's a combination of one because certainly the original Unsolved Mysteries was I loved that because,
Yeah, that's
I
true
was
crime.
already, sort of entering into adulthood, young adulthood, and because it had like true crime and disappearances and a lot of and also like a little bit of supernatural weird stuff, like I really like that. But I was in casting for a show called The Pretender for NBC, and we were having a big producer session and everything stopped, and there were 13 of us in a huge conference room during the OJ chase, and it was just we were like, "What is happening?" And then, like, we were in this and the same thing happened again at the trial. The trial was like, the final verdict. So it was like the sort of the bookends of
Mhm.
those 2
Yeah.
things. But there was also, and Shiloh knows this, back in the day, and this is like long before streaming, when you were like when my generation felt lucky if you could afford good cable, like if you could get cable other than just sort of antenna stuff. And it was a show called City Confidential. Do you guys remember City
love
Confidential?
it.
Yeah.
No.
It was fantastic. It
Yeah.
was a one of the first true crime shows with this fantastic gravelly voice narrator, and it was all about small town crimes. And in
Wow.
the first season, my hometown, my dentist was murdered by his wife and her twin sister.
Oh.
And I was like, "Whoa,
That's like
no!"
a
And
soap opera.
Mhm.
yeah, so that was my hook, the double whammy hook.
Dang. I mean, OJ obviously happened. I don't know how impactful it was for me. I was in high school as well. But I think for me 2 stand out. One was the North Hollywood shootout. So I was on, as far as like watching like live things unfold, I was in college. I was in my undergrad criminal justice program at Cal State Fullerton. And I think I was in class when it happened, but my boyfriend at the time lived across the street in some apartments, and we went to his house afterwards, and his roommate, we were all in the criminal justice program, and his roommate had videotaped it, like hit record on a VHS and recorded it, and then we like went back and just watched it from beginning to end, and that was wild. And then I think the last one for me, or not last one, but one of the other ones that I just remember unfolding and just being in such awe because it was sort of new to us was Columbine.
Yeah.
Like watching an active shooter situation and
Yeah.
those aerial photographs of the kids running out and the officers on the roof, like that was something that was just like what's happening, like kind of what is this world, sort of moments. So those seem like some biggies. And people in the audience, please, like, I know some people have been talking about OJ as well. Put the ones that you guys first kind of remember as being those historical
I
moments.
saw Rescue 911 in there, and that's like that totally just
Yeah.
brought me back to like another world. I forgot that show existed. Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I
But
also like one thing I wanted to comment about Megan's background, which we haven't really talked a lot about. I think it speaks to something, a phenomenon that I have seen is I now know you as a criminologist with your background. My dear friend Dr. Heather that I worked with at Sheriff's Department is a former corrections officer and now a brilliant law enforcement psychologist. She's just really an amazing woman. We've got Dr. Shiloh, who's former law enforcement. And I worked with, when I was still with the big police agency here in town, I had a colleague that was the head of the threat management unit. And she was getting ready to retire from police work. And she just finished her PhD in psychology. So what do we think about that? About like so many of these people transitioning from almost the other side?
Mm.
Like I wondered, do we think that that's a sort of a personality thing that says, I want to understand the behavior more, or what's the idea?
For me, it was that I couldn't work in a system that I thought was so flawed. I had this idea of what I thought U.S. probation and parole officers did, and I was working on the pre-sentence side, so I was investigating crimes that I thought were going to be these prolific drug kingpins or like just awful offenders, and most of them were like not very high level drug offenders, and they were stuck in mandatory minimum sentences, and I couldn't really make meaningful sentence recommendations, and I was like 3 years in or a little almost 3 years and 150 cases in, and I was like, "Am I really gonna do this for 25 years, keep writing these reports that I don't really agree with?" And I was like, "No, I don't think so." So, I was looking for a way to work on the system, understand it better, make policy suggestions, and I even thought about going into a policy. I still do, leaving academia and working on the policy side. So I think it helps to bring experience. I've always, like, thought that it's great to have a blend of practical experience with academia. 'Cause I just think it gives you a perspective,
It's more
that
grounded.
Mhm.
yeah, I do. I feel like I gained something by not going directly into academia.
yeah, it seemed, I think it is still incredibly rare for folks in law enforcement to then jump to that.
Yeah, it is.
Just especially because just like government work, right? Like, the benefits, the pension, like you do so much time and then you're like, "Wait, I can't change careers." So it's still pretty
Yeah,
rare, and I
yeah.
think everyone's story is a little different.
Most
It
people I
just
knew, like, I'm sorry, most, federal
yeah,
officers, though, had master's degrees, but they didn't go
right.
on for PhDs.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, and you always for the people, the cops that become clinicians, I think a lot of them do wanna give back and help, other law enforcement because they just see the trauma, they see the exposure there and want to do more, like, in retirement, and that happens as well, but, yeah, I think everyone has their own story too.
Yeah, for sure.
Good question, though, Scott. I'm just gonna check the chat here. Alright, Scott, you wanna tee up the first question to get into the
I
research?
do. I do. I think we're having a little bit of lag, so be patient.
Oh,
I
okay.
think because we're freezing a little bit, so or wave your hands really a lot if I'm talking to frozen.
Looks
Anyway,
good
so
on
I
this
think
end.
I think a good place to start after this is we would really love both of your perspectives on what about the news media and its choice to cover when it does come to crime, because that clearly is going to feed our perspectives and our ideas about what's going on in the world around us, right?
If you don't mind, Megan, I'll start,
Yeah.
and then I'm sure you'll have plenty to say. I think that the biggest shift that we've seen in crime in the media is the 24-hour news cycle and how quick things are reported. In fact, a lot of times you hear about crimes quicker on social media than before the police can even contact victims' next of kin and victims' family. And to me, this is very problematic. And along with that becomes, how it's so sensationalized. Information is being put out there before anyone even knows what happens. So like the rumor mill starts, and before you know it, actually, I could even tell you in my town, unfortunately, a woman was run over. And on my local Facebook page, it was like she died, she was jaywalking, like all of these things. And then it turned out like she's actually, thank God, she survived. She's in the hospital. She wasn't jaywalking. Like there were, it's just so quick
Wow.
to things just spiral. And that's such a minor example. But I really think, and then of course the polarization, and you see the way everything is, has to do with politics now. So, the way things are reported quickly becomes into kind of which camp are you in? Are you in this camp or are you in this camp? And that kind of, it just muddies the water. I don't think anything is really objective anymore.
Gosh. Yeah.
Well, sorry, what? Wait, I lost the original question. I was listening to
Sorry,
Amy.
'cause I didn't even probably answer the original.
don't even know
No,
what
no, no, no.
might
This is great. This is absolutely on point. The idea of our question was about,
Like how the news, like what they choose to cover, basically.
Oh,
Like
what's
what has
good.
been.
But I think Amy made a really great point, is that, and this is something that I, having a few decades on people here, I remember before there was a 24-hour news cycle.
Mhm.
And most people, if you understand the context and the history, we have a 24-hour news cycle because of the Monica Lewinsky, Bill Clinton. I mean, that is what Bill Clinton scandal,
yeah.
when that affair came up, and then this allowed news agencies. I mean, it was around the clock, and around the clock means what? Money,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So money is a big driver in this. But since we're past a scandal, I think it really spilled over into those local news. If it bleeds, it leads, it seems
Mhm.
like.
Mhm.
That's what I would have said to your question. That would have been my answer, just so you know. The media is showing
Yeah.
us like a very small percentage of the most violent crimes, the sensational crimes, the ones that are that deviate from the norm, because the average crimes that most people commit, even crimes of survival, are not exciting. So we get murder, 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 and that's 1% of all crimes. But I think we can talk about it later. It leads to totally misconceptions, misperceptions about what's really going on crime wise and who's really in danger. And, there's a lot
Which leads to division politically about, like, well,
Sure.
our leaders are not doing enough. They're not being tough on crime, because that's the first thing that they'll say is, all of us, I'm sure, have people that are more on that edge of, like, they're just letting every criminal out. The street is full of criminals. Although we will say Amy shouldn't have been walking down the street in Skid
Skid
Row.
Row.
That's Amy, where I'm not minimizing this to a
Oh my
point where you
God.
can walk
Yeah,
through LA Skid
no.
Row. That's
My
not gonna
students
happen.
love that story.
Oh, good.
I'm gonna have Shiloh as a guest speaker to
Please.
tell
Yeah.
that story.
Please, next time you have me, I will save 5 minutes for story time so they can get a laugh at you.
Amazing. It's the
But-
best story.
Sort of to add on to that question, then, what, from y'all's perspective, what does the research tell us about the types of offenders that have been sort of like highlighted, illuminated, centered on in the media, and how has that changed over the years? Like, so how is it different now than it was even 10 years ago?
So we just talked about this recently. We were having a different conversation, and it has to do with the, missing woman who is white, middle class, attractive. We see this time and time again, that space is not given to people that don't fit into this mold of an individual. Obviously, after Gabby Petito went missing, and unfortunately, subsequently, we found out that she was murdered. There was a lot of talk around, how many other cases that were similar, but Gabby's case was getting the spotlight. And I think it's important to say that doesn't mean that her case shouldn't be in the spotlight.
Right.
It just means we should also be highlighting other cases, because I think sometimes that gets confused, that we're saying, who cares about Gabby? Let's put someone else. No, we should be
Right.
talking about all the cases. So I think that becomes obviously the biggest issue, is the kind of, victims that society cares about, and the way society blames the victim, and, the innocent victim versus the victim who did something to contribute to their situation, and the way, you know, the media just ignores those
They want
individuals.
they want to divide it up as if one is worse than the other. It doesn't I guess, that's a perfect segue into this example of, you know, now they're releasing the new documentary, with Sherry Papini. It's
Mm.
like, okay, no, you were convicted of this crime. You did your time. You're still digging your heels in, and a production company is going to give you a platform, and then they're going to stream it. And at the same time, how many other women of color across the country are actually legitimately missing? And you're going to recycle this story,
So true.
you know?
Speaking
Frustrating.
of that story, I'm gonna pop that little article in the chat for everybody, because you know the four of us have talked about that case extensively. So
Oh my gosh.
the documentary is coming out, and
I
she's
saw the
sticking by her story.
documentaries. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that like in the trailer or the whatever? Like I just saw a flash of it. I knew it was
It
coming out, but like,
isn't. So
we have some inside scoop.
yeah, I got interviewed by one of the producers to potentially be in the documentary, and
Oh.
so they gave me the scoop that she's sticking by her story. She's doing this documentary,
Really?
and that supposedly, I don't know if this made it in, but there were talks about, like, she wanted to take a polygraph. There was going to be like a polygraph scene. And
So
I'm like,
sensational, so
what is happening?
unnecessary. Yeah.
And it was interesting because
Wow.
the conversation I had with the producer, I actually loved the way that they were sitting back and thinking about it, because they were like, "Hey, we want to interview as many people as possible to get a wide breadth of, like, folks around her too, and what everyone thinks, and not just let, like, her narrative lead this."
Oh, that's
And so I
great.
was like, "Okay, like, I'm actually like,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
would like to be attached to this if you guys are
Mhm.
moving forward with it." But um yeah, I just thought, like, how the hell are, like, her attorneys allowing her to do this? Because there's still child custody stuff in the mix. Like, I don't know. Great conversation, I guess, for
They're
another
not. There's no way her attorneys would have allowed her. Although I say that, and then I
But
mean,
look,
we're literally covering the Karen Reed case. We just did a live
Ugh,
stream on it. It's like her
yes.
attorneys
mhm.
let her and probably knowing or having a good chance that there could be a hung jury in her case, let her participate in the documentary. And now
Again,
the prosecutor and now the prosecutor is bringing in her
clips.
words. So
Yeah,
clips,
they're
her
showing
words.
clips all throughout the trial.
It comes
I
back
mean,
to bite you. It's surprising.
yeah, I mean, I can see. Let me sort of give a different perspective on what I just said now that I pulled my soapbox out. Um, when it comes to the Pepini, the more recent documentary, there is part of it to me that is fascinating, like from a clinical perspective, to look at this and go, I could use this in an abnormal psych class, you know, as a
Oh,
great
yeah.
example of someone that is either a hardcore narcissist or is experiencing. Maybe she experiences fugue episodes and she really
Mm.
has convinced herself that this happened. I mean, these things do exist, but you know, in the world of bigger stories, we keep recycling something that, okay, this has a history, let's remake it, let's reinvent it, rather than telling existing stories of people that, you know, their
Yeah.
stories have not gotten enough emphasis. But you know,
Well,
how to lead into that, then how responsible do you both feel the media is for the spread of something like, let me use a big example, satanic panic in the 80s? What's your perspective on that? What is media's role in that?
well, I just so you know, I give that as an example of moral panics and created by the media in my crime and media class. Satanic panic, and I
Mm,
show a clip about this. Tremendously responsible. They really, I mean, the story was just such a great one, right? It caught on like wildfire.
Mhm.
But some of the footage I show is like how many stations were covering it and satanic panic, 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 and it was just they inundated. Amy, I know we've talked about, and other scares too that have been perpetuated in the media.
Yeah, well, actually, the Satanic Panic, I think West Memphis 3 case is the best example of how the Satanic Panic led to the wrongful conviction of 3 young boys.
Yep.
sure.
And the
Um,
McMartin trial. Oh
I
my
mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
gosh.
we covered a few. Actually, Megan, you covered that case, right? There was this hysteria about all of these people that were abusing children. That was totally unfounded and not true. And Megan, what was it that they were flying people in to sexually abuse these children in a basement or something?
In tunnels. They were
in
underground tunnels.
and they
Yeah.
had like sacrificial altars and
Well,
I mean
you know,
it got really
that one particularly, I don't know if anybody read, if you look up in the New York Times, if you Google New York Times, Kyle Zerpolo,
Mhm.
Kyle was one of the children
Oh,
at the McMartin preschool, and he was one of the kids that was a colleague with another child whose mother was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and she started the whole thing,
Yeah.
made these reports. It got out of hand, but Kyle was going to be their main witness because he was telling about the satanic rituals and the black robes and the black candles.
right.
And then one of his parents or somebody said, you do have to tell the truth. And he went back to the authorities to say, I lied. I saw that on a movie of the week. And it is proven there was an ABC movie of the week about a satanic ritual, and he had made it all up. And so what did they do? They took him off the witness list.
of course.
Yeah. They took a lot of them off the witness list, if you
Yeah.
recall, because their stories, unfortunately, were falling apart. And of course, that's not the fault of children.
Mhm.
Right.
Okay.
It
I
was
also
the panic that was created. There's a panic. There's pressure. It was awful.
They were
Yeah.
planting memories. I feel like there was a lot of,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the interview techniques were terrible. I mean, there
Yeah.
are things that are
Yeah.
used in classrooms today for people that do, abuse interviews. Like don't do any of the things that were done in this process.
Right.
But it's so interesting that example is way before we had the media that we have now.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and how it perpetuated even with just, Geraldo and like all the TV talk shows and then
Sally
the
Jesse
regular news.
Raphael, Phil Donahue. Yeah.
Oh
All
my
those.
goodness. Oh, remember that era?
Oh
Yeah.
God.
my
The shoulder
gosh.
pads.
But I think I was kind of like a junkie for some of those shows. I'm not gonna lie. Like I'm
Well,
pretty sure I watched some of them.
I was living in Chicago at the time, and I didn't have a regular schedule where I could, watch the afternoon TV shows because I was either working or, commuting or something. And this was before Oprah hit it really big, and she was still more of a local Midwest show.
Right.
And she interviewed Ray Bucky
Oh,
after
man.
everything was settled, after the grandmom had died of a heart attack during the trial, and
Yep.
and she's interviewing him, and I remember not really knowing about the story because I hadn't been paying attention. But my first thought was, because he was just so hapless, he was like, I
Yeah, he
don't
was.
know how this happened to me.
Yeah.
And he seemed so authentic. And she did such a good interview. I came away from it really chilled. Like, how did this happen to this family? Everything was taken from them.
Everything.
And those kids were traumatized. Like those kids they were traumatized by the bad interview, like Amy was talking about with the implanted memories. And to this day, many of them still think that they were taken in rocket ships.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
saw that recently. I don't know, it was something maybe a little bit older, but I saw one of the former children give an interview, and she says
Wow.
it happened. And I was like, oh, I believe she believes it happened. I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah.
And look, we don't know. I'm sure, like, if you think about it statistically, some of these children were probably abused by someone in their life, or you know what I mean? It's possible. If you think about the vast number of people that were involved, I have to believe that a few of them experienced some form of
Well,
abuse.
just the
sometime.
odds. Yeah.
It's
Right.
the odds. Yeah.
Numbers, right?
Exactly, but I don't think it was at the hands of those teachers. And there was also the one of the things in our field that was a huge scare too was the super predator scare of the 90s, where a
Yep.
couple of criminologists predicted, based on this cohort of career criminal offenders, and it was just one cohort, and they kind of predicted it exponentially, that it was going to double, and they didn't account for the factors that were going to drop crime. And so they talked about the juvenile that was going to be this super predator, and all these states were designing much tougher laws for juveniles, and it caught on like wildfire again.
Yeah.
And it was, the repercussions were terrible.
I mean, there's still people currently incarcerated
because
that are products of the super predator literature, that were sentenced to life without parole as juveniles using that study. And it's
Goodness.
unbelievable.
And this is 30 years past now, right?
At least.
Wow.
And then it also reminds me, Megan, you teach about the Martinson Nothing Works studies as well. That study that pretty much made the pendulum swing back from rehabilitation, to punishment, because a research paper said like nothing works. People are not able to be rehabilitated. And then people ran with those findings.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah,
Yeah.
something you're not supposed to do, especially when it's on one of either end of the extreme, right? Nothing is a catch-all for everything. We talk a lot, obviously, about like the intense interest in true crime. And, again, like we all know that this has been happening forever, since humans existed to consume true crime and whatever was available to them, public executions to now, TikTok,
Yeah.
what have you. But what would you say? I know you guys mentioned earlier, like the court TV kind of being a really pivotal moment. What are we seeing now as far as the way people consume true crime? And well, maybe I'll ask a follow-up question to that, just in terms of like our attention spans. But what is sort of the trend, which kind of goes with this question of like how people are consuming it, and what does that kind of mean in terms of like what are the public's takeaways?
Megan, you could start on that one if you'd like.
I mean, people are consuming it, obviously in like various different formats. I was just at CVS and I heard them talking about a true crime show behind the counter. And I was like, I like inched my way in. They were talking about
Right.
Evil Lives Here. No, I watched that other one on ID. Oh, no. I was watching this one, See No Evil. And I'm like, it's so saturated. So on like ID, there's whole networks devoted obviously to just true crime. There doesn't seem to be any slowdown in the interest in it. And then there's podcasting, which is huge. I mean, since podcasting in the last 10 years, the new way to consume true crime, it's very saturated as well, as we know. I think that people are consuming so much so the demand is like strong, that they're creating shows. I'm trying to think like how to say this. Like I got contacted to do a show about people who are committing crimes and caught on surveillance, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'd love to.
Very specific, right?
but I was happy to talk about that until she told me, oh, there's a catch, and I was like, well, what's the catch? They're naked when they commit the crime. And I'm like, no. She goes, no. It's going to be done tastefully. I go, no, that's not. There's nothing tasteful to be done about this. So
I just think different one you got approached about that was even worse than that.
You know what? I don't remember. I think the point is like everyone's angling for something new, and as you had pointed out, Scott, they're all covering a lot of the same crimes too. Like, how do we get this to be different or unique or the most extreme? But I mean, it's I guess I don't. Every outlet has become really true crime. I don't see a slowdown in true crime in any form of media, mass media, old media, new media. Like it's so much so that like my students actually do know a lot of the crimes that are older, but not from the media that we consume, from TikTok.
Yeah.
So it's evolving, but on every platform, true crime is still just like extremely popular.
And of course, there's the negatives and the positives, right? There we see the exploitation and all of the awful things, but we can't ignore how much good has been done with this boom in true crime.
Agreed.
Media content.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what's fascinating too, along that sort of trajectory that was predicted within entertainment. I remember 6 years ago, kind of like right before COVID, there were several articles about the death of true crime media and the death of the true crime podcast, because the true crime podcast had been driving the market for so long and it hasn't gone anywhere.
No.
It has not.
No.
Well, and like YouTube channels are the new court TV, like, because you're just,
They are.
I watch, a certain YouTube channel to watch the Karen retrial every day. And,
Every day.
You get a little commentary. If I miss it, I can watch it listen to it at 2 times speed on my way home. It's and then like, Scott and I looked at a lot of documentaries for a couple of years, and just the documentaries that are being made way too soon, where you're like, this hardly wrapped up, if at all.
And it affects the investigation.
Yes.
A lot of times it's doing more harm than good. You have people that are getting these, you have these citizen sleuths that are, actually defaming people,
Yeah.
going with their own theories. And I think it's muddying the investigation. Sometimes does it work in the correct way? Sure, it does. But I totally agree that sometimes they jump the gun and they have these documentaries before you know enough for there even to be any sort of objective understanding of what happened.
Well, and
You know,
don't like get me started on the like Lifetime movies based on it that come
Mm.
out. Like I don't even how they lightning fast create something. I'm just like too soon, too soon.
I know it's crazy.
one
Always
of the
too
big
soon.
one
Mhm.
now that you guys got me thinking, it's like priming the carburetor. I'm thinking about another huge crime case from my youth was um Joey Buttafuoco.
Oh, Buttafuoco, Megan, I love
Buttafuoco.
him.
And
You
remember,
know.
so Buttafuoco, and then
Yes.
who was
Amy
Amy? Was
Fisher.
it Amy
Amy
something?
Amy
Amy
Fisher.
Fisher,
Amy
yeah.
Fisher.
New
So
Jersey, right?
Saturday Night
Long
Live
Island.
did a whole skit
Yes.
on that
Uh-huh.
about that very thing that you're talking about, Amy, that where it's moved so quickly. So they had the crime, and
Mhm.
then they had the TV movie of the week, and then
Three
they
three
had
TV
three of
movies,
them, and then the
Crazy.
end, kind of the capstone was Tori Spelling says, "I'm gonna tell my version of this story." And
Oh
then there's like
God.
the actress that did the Tori Spelling
Yeah,
impersonation.
uh-huh.
But it was
So,
like that was a great example. That was in the news cycle all the time.
Scott,
Oh,
I was gonna bring that one up because Joey Buttafuoco lived in my town, and
uh-huh.
I knew his son, and my friends babysat for him. I was like, "That's not right." And so this was, like, crazy that it happened all around us. So I was gonna bring that one up as well because this
Mhm.
was, like, really huge in my
Well, and
town.
that
Yes.
one was so interesting because, it was so sensationalized.
And we covered that one on the podcast.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You did a great
Yeah,
job.
and
Yes.
Shannon in she goes, "Long Island Lolita." Yeah,
Yes.
that was her nickname, was
So
the Long
Alyssa
Island Lolita.
Milano was one,
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Drew Barrymore, I
Yeah.
think, played, and
Oh
then
my
oh my god,
God.
it was crazy. It was
They had like the trifecta of all
Mhm.
the young
Yeah.
actresses at the time.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's interesting to even look at like what counts as a journalist, what counts as media anymore, because and I'll give you a couple of examples. So the police department I work for, I was pretty good friends. One of the commanding officers in charge of our media relations was a mentor of mine for a while. And she would talk about like social media people, submitting for media passes and things like that. And literally they're just like live streaming an
Yeah,
event, right? But
yeah,
in some sense, you're like, well, how is that different than just a news camera being set up and live streaming?
yeah.
The other thing that I just like learned about this week. I was talking to one of our traffic officers, like the motor officers. I'm responsible for one of those divisions as their psychologist. And he was talking about they had a DUI checkpoint that night. He goes, we have them every Thursday night. And he goes, Shiloh, there is a crowd across the street every Thursday night just live streaming and filming
Wow.
the DUI checkpoint. And he goes, which is fine. Like we're used to cameras in our faces now, whatever. He goes, but I pull some young lady out of the car to give her field sobriety test, and they are now like arm's length live streaming her on TikTok. And I'm just thinking about the privacy of the
Yeah,
citizen that
yeah.
is going through this, which
Mhm.
it's public, right? It's public out in the public. So there's no like privacy really that they're owed in a sense. But it was interesting because we were talking about like, yeah, what can the police do to kind of protect that a little bit? Because that's bullshit. I mean, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It also impacts the police officer's job. It
Oh,
impacts the safety of
absolutely.
everyone involved.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
And
it could be in a good way, right? Because it works both ways, right? Because you
Right.
have
Yeah.
more transparency, which leads to more accountability. But then, like you said, there's a breach of privacy. So you have all these things kind of like at odds with each other.
Yes, and he was saying, like, when they go to blow in the breathalyzer machine, and if they're giving them the ticket or whatever before the arrest, they'll go into this little trailer, but the door remains open, and he said the crowd of people will come over and start filming, and I'm just like, "This has got to stop." Like, I was so hot
There's
afterwards, I was like, "I can't
yeah.
with this, these
I'm
poor
actually
people."
surprised that there hasn't been some sort of policy
I
passed on
know.
that. There will be, I would imagine.
I said
Well,
it's gonna come to some lawsuit for
Yeah.
sure.
I want to take that back to Amy's point then, because you brought up a really great angle about the concept of defamation
Mhm,
in these situations. And can you talk a little bit more about that? When you were talking about sort of the citizen detectives or the YouTubers
mhm.
that go off the deep end,
Yeah.
tell us more about that, and do you define defamation for us? Because I always get there's defamation and what's the other one? Slander,
Slander.
and I always mix the two up.
I mean, I can't say that I'm an expert in that area, so I don't know. But I can tell you that you can't just go, and even as podcasters, we have to, people are innocent until proven guilty, and you can't just get on a mic and start saying this person did this. And yeah, I mean, you can, but you could face a civil lawsuit because you're, I don't know what the exact term is, Megan, you do, but I'm saying, Megan, you might, but you can't just, I don't want to say you can't, like, you pretty much can't talk shit on people. You can't
Yeah, I think
use
one
people
one
as
of those
like,
has to
It's
one of those has to do with
slander.
about their income, right? If you say something that affects their standing and like that's what there's libel. Yeah,
oh, but
Shannon has
that's like
another. There's
social
libel, slander,
standing. Then you have
defamation.
to be able to prove that
Right.
one affected, so it becomes a little difficult with
So
what
if you
you
have
can
a
actually prove.
false statement, essentially, that injures someone's reputation, their income, their standing, it splits down whether or not it's slander or libel. One is
Mhm.
written and the other one is spoken. So
Oh,
And
okay.
what does
libel libel
defamation fall?
libel is written and
Okay.
slander is spoken, and they both come
Hmm.
under, as I understand it, they both come under the umbrella of defamation. It's just one
Oh.
is in word, like a newspaper printing
Mhm,
something false,
mhm.
versus me as a podcaster going out and saying something totally false. And I usually get them reversed too. I used to get them reversed too. So I was like, I think this is the way. But
There was a
It's
really
not
great
easy to
comment.
prove, though. Is that true? Would you agree, Megan? It's not that easy for someone to prove.
it depends, because there's also there's all these exceptions, because there's opinion also. So opinion about someone doesn't necessarily count. It's like something that is knowingly false that you print, and it has to, the intent has to be kind of
Right.
malicious as
Which is
well.
which is
So
very hard to prove.
so yes, you're right, Amy. It's just hard to prove. But yeah, it's
Mhm.
complicated. I would think it's complicated. Yeah.
There's one
I try
example that
I
I
try to be
just saw.
careful for sure.
You were giving the example of like the TikTokers with the open,
Mhm.
the back of the van. And I have to also comment, like, and maybe, I, God forbid any of us are ever at the receiving end of that sort of being recorded at one of your worst moments
Right.
Yeah.
when you've made a bad decision,
Yeah.
because we've all made bad decisions, that like, but now it lives on the
Oh.
internet and it
Mhm,
gets promoted on the internet. But I
Mhm.
think also sort of there's one influencer that popped up on my feed today, and he's a young man with a big bushy mustache and kind of a severe look. And it was his whole theme is like, dark secrets of actors out there. And what he chose to talk about was David Harbour, who plays the sheriff on Stranger Things.
Oh, yeah, of
He's
course.
and he's in one of the Marvel movies, really gifted actor. And he's been very open for years about being bipolar and how he has to manage his illness and he uses medication and he's in
Yeah.
treatment. And yet the whole way this was framed was as if this is like this horrific, like he's Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, that he has
Hmm.
to carry this burden. And
Oh, God.
again, I wonder where that's going to go. I mean, I wonder where all of this sort of um, escalation of private information is going to go, and if people can successfully take action. That he's been open. Harbor has been open about his diagnosis, so that's a different thing.
mhm.
But yeah, I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of any of this.
I mean, the good news about that is at least people are so much more aware now about mental illness, and the stigma is so
Right.
much less. And I think the tides in that one would turn against
Mhm.
the guy who
I
tried
would
to
agree.
vilify or make
Yeah.
this something that it was, wrong, or, I would think it would go against him. I think that was a
Mhm,
mistake, and I think it's
Yeah.
stupid.
I would
mhm,
hope so. Well, speaking of social media and all these platforms, you guys highlighted a case on your show, the murder of Ana Abulaban.
mhm.
I hope
Abulaban, yeah.
Abulabam. Can you give
Or
us an
Abulaban.
overview on that case and, the prominent role of social media in that?
Yeah, so this was, a couple, Ali and Ana Abulaban, who had, met, and, uh, they met and they started dating, and things kind of quickly, happened between the two of them. He was working on an army base, and, she was, living somewhere around, I know where they moved, but I'm trying to think where they actually met. Oh my goodness, it's like escaping me at this moment, so I apologize. And if someone pops it up, I'll see it. But regardless, they met. It was, kind of immediate. They start dating. Early on in their relationship, there was an incident of, I would say, violence reported that Ali had put hands on her or on a friend of hers. And this is like 2 months into their dating.
Mm.
What happened was that, they wound up, she got pregnant and, he wanted to be with her. They wanted to be together. They wanted to start a family. But she was really at first kind of dependent on him and his family. They moved to where his family lived. She was totally isolated. He definitely had there were red flags early on, of yeah, of I would say abusive tendencies, controlling tendencies for sure. But then what happens with him is he's like this, wannabe kind of comedian who has all these personas. So like um he starts posting on TikTok.
Mm.
And he becomes known for this persona Jin Kid, and he does, like, a Scarface impression and some other, like, video game impressions, and his popularity, like, skyrockets, and he has, like, over 2,000,000 viewers. But as his popularity is soaring, so is his ego, and so is his anger. Also, his drug addiction really escalated, ramped up to the point where he started doing cocaine on live streams.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it really it escalated, and he's filming or he's showing every part of their lives, and at first, it was like this beautiful glorified version, like, "I love my life." Anna seemed like this just a lovely, beautiful person. She did not really wanna be front and center in his videos. She was more like a behind the scenes, but, then it got dark where he started showing their fights and the way I can't believe it. What he streamed to me was the way he abused her in every way, psychologically, um emotionally. You didn't quite see the physical abuse, but you could tell it was there, and you could see signs of it for sure. And he was just, he was terrorizing her in many ways. And she eventually decided to get out of this relationship. And of course, that's like the most dangerous time for people who are in abusive
Sure.
relationships. And within a couple of weeks, he had murdered her and her new partner or her new love interest at the time. But it really escalated on TikTok in so many ways. He had really, really bad signs of like who he was. I certainly would not attempt to diagnose him, but like if anything came to mind, it was like malignant narcissist. Like he just
Mhm.
had all these terrible qualities that kind of, he was manipulative. He was harmful. He was paranoid. He was, he just had a lot of these characteristics, and they started playing out. And like at first on TikTok, it was disguised and like this pretty package that he put together. But then what happens is he starts like airing his personal grievances against her. And I feel like some of his loyal followers were kind of like, what do you even say, fanning the flames or stoking the fire. Like,
I bet.
they're
Piling
like,
Well, I
on.
can I
Yeah.
can imagine what kind of followers he had too, was
Right.
like kind
Yeah.
of being this egotistical male.
right. It was like, yeah, bro, she shouldn't treat you like that. Yeah. And all of
Yeah,
a sudden, he was very addicted. His ego, he had,
sure.
extreme ego. So,
And just throw
I
some
don't
cocaine in the mix, why
Mhm.
not?
I don't think that, like, I would never say that TikTok was responsible for the murder. I certainly don't believe that, but, like, especially when I teach about serial killers, we talk about the facilitators,
Mm,
that facilitated the crime, and had it not been for that, maybe it would have been postponed, or maybe things would have happened differently, or you just don't know. And I think for him, TikTok and cocaine were facilitators of the escalated abuse and probably the ultimate crime that happened. And it
We
was
we
awful. It
talk
was an awful case.
we
Yeah.
talk about in our presentations we'll talk about dark tetrad and uh the combinations that go like, well, what are the underlying? There's biological factors, it's nature and nurture, there's some
Right.
wiring there, and then what is the match that sets it all aflame,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think that what you're hitting on is like that idea of facilitation. All of us, I mean, there's a psychoanalytic theory that says that all of us carry some version of a personality disorder at our core. And when we're at our worst, when we are really at our worst, out of control, we will react in a way that fits one of the personality disorders. And
Mm,
what I see in a lot of social media, because it it's so quick and they have to generate so much content, the TikTokers and the other
yeah,
creators, that I really do think that it stokes the fires of narcissism.
Mhm.
Like, I
it
don't think
does.
that they're all diagnosable narcissists, but they certainly get into a milieu where they are encouraged to continue acting in these ways
Yeah.
that violate other people's privacy. But that is a horrible case, and I agree with you. I think, like, the disinhibition that comes with any kind of amphetamine or stimulant use is certainly, he's high as a kite and then reading all this support,
Mhm.
from his
Right.
followers, like, "Yeah, that bitch, she should take this, blah, blah, blah,"
And there
it's a
was some
terrible
of that. I
combination.
mean, I was surprised and disappointed when I looked at that case to see that people I read some of the things that he was posting, and I thought, Surely people would immediately say, not bro, you're right, but bro, you're way over the line.
Yeah.
You're
Or
acting
called
out."
authorities maybe,
Right.
reported something.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
for real. I
yeah,
mean, people in Ruby Frankie's case, what did they do? They formed an online petition for
Yeah.
people to intervene and get those kids out.
Mhm.
But in this case, nobody thought like, "Hey, we should probably try to help this woman who's clearly crying out for
And
help."
Megan, that's a great example of how, these platforms can help, because had it
Yeah,
not been for that petition, who knows what would have happened to those.
True.
yeah.
yeah, I agree.
That was
So
that that kid, that her son was so close to dying,
Mhm.
so
from
close.
malnutrition. Yeah.
Amy is our silver lining today. She's like,
Not
"Here's the good of
usually.
that, though." You're not usually.
Fuck no.
You
Well, I
are
mean,
actually.
yeah, and that's a great point too about, like, we can look at both sides, that these some sort the armchair detectives can muddy the water, and yet,
Mm,
like Amy has pointed out, there are other times where one person thinking outside the box can say,
Yeah.
"Hey, I'm just throwing this out here," and then it sets to fire, a
Mhm,
whole new angle of an investigation.
Mhm.
or
Unfortunately,
like
there's just a
yeah.
lot of people out there that aren't that smart, that
Mhm.
think that they're
Yeah.
creatively thinking outside the box.
But it's also like social media with Gabby Petito, we talked about like the people who were following and posting and they found her. I mean, they helped locate
yeah.
Gabby, so like, yes, it's very yeah, I do teach that too in my class, just so you know, that is a double-edged sword. There is extreme utility. And I think even law enforcement now sees the benefit of having some of this information. However,
For
some of
sure.
it can just be also like, you see the dark side and the mean side and the cruel side. And I don't like that side, but I
Mhm.
mean, this is, I guess, life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very true. I'm curious, just like as a final question here, any thoughts about where AI will kind of take us in terms of media and crime?
Well, I can go ahead.
No, Megan, you go.
Um, I think that anytime you see the expansion of technology, you're going to see the innovation of new crime. So, and that is what we saw with the internet and the level or the expansion of crimes you see. So, what I think AI is great. It's useful. We love it for certain things.
Yeah.
It can be very
Same here.
utilitarian, but I think with the expansion of AI, you're going to see expansion of a whole new genre of crimes, and then the law is going to have to catch up with them, which is
Always.
I was
It's
gonna say,
already so far behind.
as a silver liner person here, yes, but hopefully law enforcement can also use it to their advantage, so maybe it'll somehow all
yeah,
even out in some way.
that's
And
true.
I got so concerned about it. I reached out to all of my cousins that are, I mean, there's nobody that's not computer savvy,
Mhm.
but when the voice cloning phenomenon started,
Yeah.
I reached out and was like, I will never ask you for money. I will
Yeah.
never call you and ask you for money. I will never email and you ask you for money. So if that happens, don't believe it. And what I was really glad to hear was that some people knew about it and understood, oh
Yeah,
yeah, that's not gonna happen to me. And others
yeah,
that didn't know were like, wait, what are you talking about? Help me understand this. So I
Oh
was
yeah.
able to
gosh.
send them links and saying, it's not just
Oh,
me. If you get a desperate call from your grandchild,
Yeah.
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 don't
Oh my
necessarily
gosh.
believe it.
We covered a case like that, Megan, remember? Someone like a mother, her daughter called and said she was kidnapped and being
Yes.
held for ransom.
Call.
It's
Yeah.
absolutely like I'd rather err on the side of caution. Yeah, I'll send you my money if I'm not going to stop and be like, oh no, is this my kid's voice?
Amy, don't
Luckily,
say that
she was-
because people watching now know that you will give them money.
Yeah,
I'll
I
send you
know.
my money.
Great.
I don't
It
have
just
that much
doesn't
freedom.
happen
I'm a
that way. We all
podcaster.
know it doesn't happen.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
There's a great independent movie out, and I think it's called June. It's
June.
all
Oh,
about an elderly woman who gets scammed, and she
I'm putting it on my list.
decides, I'm going to go get my money back. And it's a wonderful, wonderful movie.
Ooh. An
Oh,
elderly
yeah.
vigilante.
Oh, I love it. That's cool.
I'm totally in for
So
it.
anything new coming up on the shows, or you guys got anything new in your pockets?
I mean, we've always got new stuff in our pockets. We
No, we
started.
started
Don't
doing
we all?
like Reconsidered is kind of new, right?
Okay, tell us about that. Tell us about those
Okay.
cases.
So we're going through because now that we have over 250 episodes or about 250, we're now going to our back catalog, looking at
Mhm.
episodes from 5 years ago and doing updates on
Smart.
the cases.
Which has been so much more
It's been
fun.
so much, and to listen to yourself from 5 years ago, you're just like, it's so cringe, but it's so much fun. It's
Yeah.
Oh
fun.
yeah.
And it's nice to see that some cases have, some cases have come so far and
Mhm.
there's been movement in the right direction. And then other cases like Lavina Johnson, which I'll never understand, is still just sitting stagnant. And it's
Wow.
mind blowing. So it's really eye opening. So that's been kind of fun.
Yeah, I love doing Reconsidered. I have to say that's been
Yeah.
really cool for us.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah,
Hope
that's been cool to listen to for sure. I've been popping in some of those, and Scott
Oh,
and
thanks,
I.
Shiloh.
Yeah, of course.
You're very.
I think it's important though with whatever it is that you do, what information you're putting out there, right? Because like if Scott and I find like there is a not media,
Mhm.
update or clinical research that has now come to light that we're, what do we call ours? Revisited, like Stockholm Syndrome Revisited
Yep.
or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes we record an episode and then we find all this other stuff. We're like, oh shit, like this info cannot just be on page 8. We need
Yeah.
to get this back up front again. And I think it's kind of part of our duty when we're talking about some of these things. Very, very cool. So let everyone know where they can find you guys.
Oh, well, you can
not your homes because
Yeah.
Amy or not Amy's
Amy's
phone
like-
number for
Amy's like, I'm
scams.
going to give you my phone number. Obviously, you can find Women in Crime podcast on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can visit us at womenInCrimePodcast.com, and we're also on YouTube now. So that's been fun. Doing videos is actually kind of fun and new for us.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
think you guys were a little reluctant at first, right?
We were definitely.
Having cameras in your faces.
Well,
Totally.
I don't like to brush my hair, and clearly I didn't brush my hair tonight for you because you're old friends and you can't see how many people are watching, so it makes me think it's just the 4 of us.
That's right. Just us, you guys.
Well, we've enjoyed it. I mean, we've been doing these since, what was our other we were on some other platform, Get Vocal or something that was really,
During the
really
pandemic.
kind of
Yeah.
hard to manage and stuff. StreamYard is really easy to do, but this is also, I feel like we have such great conversations with our guests. I mean, we always have wonderful people like you guys, and it's like a different take on what's being done. We're not revisiting the same story. Like how many crime shows have now been called Murder in the Moonlight? I think there's 3 different stories. So to be able to have you guys on in this platform, and I think people even comment, like, I like seeing how you interact with your guests. So
that's so
maybe
nice.
this is the new thing.
You guys are great
welcome.
hosts. That's why.
Yeah, you really. I mean, you're so
Aw.
personable, and you have beautiful skin. I mean, you should be on video. Why would that skin go to waste?
It's all lighting. It's all lighting magic.
I mean,
Whatever it is, you
it's
look
true,
great,
Amy. Their video is looking good.
right? Like, why would you not be on
Oh.
video when you?
You also
agree.
you got to get one of the little circle lamps. I'm telling you,
Oh, if you
1994.
saw the lighting,
You saw the lighting I have over here. It's just, I need a filter.
Circle lamp, Scott. It's called
Yeah.
a ring light.
Ring lamp.
Ring light.
So
I
old.
love that he said a circle lamp. I love it.
I know.
That was so
Thank you
cute.
guys
Thank
so
you.
much.
This was
It's been
really
too
fun.
long.
Thank you.
Come to the East Coast. Let's see you.
We got to do a conference together.
I know that would be great.
We're gonna be on Long Island for a wedding in October.
Oh, get out.
So-
Are you really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. All right.
So
Well, you'll
we'll
have
see.
to let us know
We'll
then.
let you guys
we'll
know.
probably be
Yeah,
able to make that
That
work.
would be great.
Oh, and Shiloh,
Okay.
if you want to talk Karen Read it all, like I'm also watching every second of trial and playing it on my commute as well. Same thing, listening.
Yeah.
So
Or like, if you guys have another live stream and if I can ever
Oh yeah, I
join,
didn't know you were
let
so
me
into
know.
it, but yeah, we could totally
Yeah.
do that.
She's
Yeah,
so
I
into it. She is so into it.
first time around, I watched every single day. I'm not a trial watcher either. Like that's not
No,
like
I
my
am.
thing. It's
Megan.
just fascinating. So let me know. I'm happy to
Okay.
pop in and
All right.
chat
Cool.
about it. I'm going to end the live stream. You
Great.
guys don't go anywhere yet,
Okay.
but bye
Okay.
guys.
Yeah,
Good
we'll hang for a
night.
minute.
We will see you
Thank
next
you.
time on
Thank
LA
you.
Not so.
Confidential. Take care, guys. Good night.
Bye, folks. Don't leave
All right.
the